All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. If I can have your attention, please. I don't like to whistle at people, I'm sorry. All right, so it's my great pleasure to introduce Bart Campolo. He's a veteran organizer, community organizer. He has so much experience that I could probably sit up here for half an hour and just talk about all the things he's done. He's a fantastic guy, so I'm just going to let him go ahead and get started. So let's have a round of applause for Bart Campolo.
Thank you. Just clip this on. Hey everybody, how are you? I am glad to be here, although this is like the last seminar of the day, so I don't know if you're all like, too many ideas, fire hosed out. So we'll do the best we can, okay? Do you guys want to sit down? You're happy where you are. All right. Yes. All right. Then we're happy to have you there. Listen, I got 20 minutes, right? And what I have to tell you is that my background is as an evangelist. I spent most of my career as a Christian evangelist, and as a Christian evangelist, 20 minutes, that's not even enough time for me to clear my throat. So we're going to have to move really, really fast. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, like, supporting every point that I'm making. I'm going to try to give you an idea, and then hopefully it'll raise some questions. My job here is I want to give you a why, not a how, okay? Because you look smart. And so if you decide you want to do something, I'm very confident that you'll be able to figure out how to do it, but I'm going to try to motivate you. So here we go. And what's funny is I know when I tell you that I came out of the evangelical Christian community, I know some of you think like, oh, he's going to tell us the story of how he came out of Christianity. And I'm not. I'm going to tell you the story how I got in. Because how I got in is what's interesting when it comes to this stuff. Thing is, I grew up, my father was a famous Christian evangelist. He was traveling all over the world giving talks and stuff like that. And so I grew up in kind of that world, but I didn't actually become a Christian until I was 15 years old in high school. And the reason I didn't become a Christian wasn't because I was rebellious or hated my father, he was a bad guy or everything like that. It was just I didn't believe in God up until that point. And it's hard to become a Christian if you don't believe in God. It's a basic theological obstacle for many people. And when I was 15 years old, I was playing soccer on the team at my high school. And I was a young athlete. But to be honest with you, I was also a really nice guy. I really was. I was a nice person. I liked people. I was the kind of guy who, if in the school they were bullying some kid, because I was kind of a person of some prestige at my high school, I would step in and I would intervene. You know that kind of person. Some of you are that kind of person who just sort of has an inner sense of justice that sort of sides with the underdog. And I was that guy. And as a high school, but at 15, I'm playing on the soccer team in high school. I'm just all wrapped up in what's going on. And an older guy on my soccer team started to befriend me, started hanging around with me. And he asked me to come with him to his youth group. And so one Thursday night, I went to his youth group. And it was at his church. And when I say it was a youth group, there were 300 kids at this youth group. They had a live band. Like, they had these monster games. It was like this mega youth group at this mega church. And I got to tell you, I walked into that place, and within about 15 minutes, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And you say, why? And the answer is because I walked into this place, and there were 300 high school kids being really nice to each other. You remember high school, right? You remember how there were the powerful kids, and then there were the kind of the kids that were left out. There were all these cliques and clubs. They had everybody at this thing. They had superstars from the high school soccer team and football teams and stuff like that. And then there were the geekiest kids you could imagine. There were freshmen who didn't know their way around, and everybody was being nice to everybody else. And I got to tell you something. As a high school kid, that impressed me. I had seen high school kids have fun together. I had seen high school kids show off for each other. I don't think I'd ever seen high school kids love each other. And these guys were really loving each other. And for someone like me, that was incredibly compelling. And so what happens is that I'm watching this thing going on, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So I started coming to the meetings and everything and going to stuff. And I quickly figured out that all these kids, the kids that were at the center of the thing were all hyper-religious. They were doing morning Bible studies and they were doing all this stuff. And so like I figured if that was the price of admission to be part of this group, so I started doing morning Bible studies. And I started going to the prayer meetings. And I started going to stuff. And I didn't believe in God, mind you. But I just started hanging around with everybody. One day, one of the guys in the group took me out to McDonald's for breakfast. And he said, Bart, you've been hanging around this group for a long time. He said, I don't think you've ever accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. So what about it? Do you want to become a Christian or not? And I looked at him and I said, sure. Sure, okay. And so I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience, but we prayed the believer's prayer right there in McDonald's, which is not a glamorous place actually to become a Christian. There are evangelical Christians, and like I'm a Mick Christian. Extent of Gothic arches, I had the golden arches. But I became a Christian, and remind you, I still don't believe in God at this point, but I want to be part of the group. And I start praying and all that stuff, and you say like, and so did you never believe? Oh no. At some point, as I went through all the motions, and I prayed the prayers, and I went to the retreats, at some point, I had, I guess, what you would call a transcendental experience, where I really felt like God was speaking to me. And you say, but you're not a Christian anymore. So you were faking, like, no. Transcendental experiences are real. Like, people have spiritual experience. They hear voices and stuff. And you don't need to go to church to have one. Like, if you do the right drugs, you can have a transcendental experience. If you hook people up to electrodes that are Buddhist monks, or that are in meditation or doing certain forms of yoga, an Indian sweat lodge, you can induce a spiritual experience. Don't ever think that people don't have those real experiences. I would just explain it very differently to you now, what happened. And what I would tell you is that the reason I was willing to put myself in a place where that stuff all made sense to me was because I wanted to be part of that group. It turned out later on that the high school kid that took me there, that they had targeted me. That they had actually sat down at a meeting and they had decided, they looked around the high school and they said, who should we get for our group? Who would be good? And they picked me, not because they thought I needed to be a part of this social group, not because they thought I needed to be loved or enfolded, but they thought I would be a very good evangelist. They thought I would be good at getting other people. See, the whole group was organized about reaching out to people who needed support and needed friendship and offering that to them. And so they targeted two kinds of people. They went after people who they thought really were lonesome or outcasts or would really thrive or benefit from being a part of the group. And then they went after people who they thought would really get into creating that experience for other people. And that's why they went after me, because they knew I was a nice guy. And boy, it worked. Because basically I looked at that organization and I thought, like, this is a club of people that are organized around the principle of let's love each other and then let's love people who need to be loved. Man, they had me at hello. I was in on that. And it's a very interesting thing when you really think about it, is that they targeted me and they brought me in, and the reason I wanted to be a part of that group is the reason why people join all kinds of groups. If you want to read a book about this, there's an old classic written by Eric Hoffer called The True Believer, and it's about why people join the Nazi Party or fundamentalist Christianity or the feminist movement. And what Hoffer says is that what people join these movements for is because of the community. They want to be part of a group of people and the community delivers some real values. And one of the values that the community delivered for me was identity. Here was a group that, like, I could identify. If you're part of this group, it means you're about loving people. It means you're about reaching out. It means you're about trying to make the world a better place. And that's who I was, and I wanted to identify that way. So I joined that group because that group manifested that identity for me. So, a big part of it was it gave me an identity. And if you know anything about high school kids or college kids, it's that a lot of them are looking for an identity. They're separating from their families, they're separating, and they're going like, who am I? Where do I fit in? Where do I belong? And this group met that need for me. It told me who I was. But it did more than that. It also delivered me into a relational structure. Right? All of a sudden, I was developing relationships with kids that were older than me, who were mentoring me. Very quickly with kids who were younger than me, who I was mentoring. And I don't mean mentoring that classic, like, the way they do it in college classes. I'm talking about, like, we had a value system, and there were people that were teaching me how to be better at that value system, and then there were younger people who I was explaining the value system as best I understood it to them. And so I had a network of relationships. All of a sudden, I was saying to them, hey, brother, hey, sister, what's going on? Because we were in this thing together. And so it wasn't just an individual identity, it was a group identity. It was funny, we were in a seminar with one of the guys earlier, and he was talking about the dangers of tribalism. And I'm thinking to myself, dangers of tribalism? Everybody needs a tribe. If people are scared. It's a big world out there. Who are my people? Where do I belong? This group did that. But it did one last thing for me. It not only gave me a sense of identity and a set of relationships, but it gave me a sense of mission. Or maybe a better way of saying it is it clarified my sense of mission. I already wanted to be a good person, and I already wanted to make the world a better place. But this narrowed it down. This is how you be a good person. This is what it means to make the world a better place. This is the difference you can make. And man, if there's one thing that young people especially want in this life, one thing they respond to, it's a sense of mission. And so what happened is that I became a Christian. And you say, but what about the narrative? What about the dogma? Didn't it occur to you that you were like joining into are you saying that you joined, you didn't join so that you would go to heaven? No, that was the price of joining, was that I had to believe a lot of stuff that made no sense at all to me. Transcendental God, Jesus, a body rising from the dead. Do you really think that all those kids on your campus are joining Crusade because the dogma makes sense to them? They join those groups not because of the dogma, but what? In spite of the dogma. They join for the community. Which is why these secular student association or alliance chapters on the campuses, why you guys will never be able to compete with them until you deliver community. Until you deliver a group of people that has an identity that delivers, or rather, that has an ethos that delivers identity, that delivers loving relationships, that delivers a strong sense of mission. And that mission, by the way, is going to have to be a hell of a lot deeper than pointing at Christians and saying they're stupid. You're going to have to be about more than that if you want to make a difference in this world. People always go, oh, the secular community has no money compared to the Christians. Who do you think supports Campus Crusade for Christ and InterVarsity on those campuses? Do you think it's the kids? They don't have any money. They're college students just like you. So where does the money come from? It comes from grown-ups who came through those groups when they were in college, and the groups had such a shaping impact. That was their friendship, that was their identity, that was the thing that defined their college experience. And when they get out, they're so loyal that they write checks for the rest of their life. And the question is, does anything happen in the Secular Student Alliance meeting on your campus that is powerful enough that 20 years later a person will write a check because they want that same thing to happen to somebody else? And what I'm going to tell you is that people don't write checks like that for debate societies. They don't write checks like that for lecture series. They write checks like that for communities that mean something to them and that form the basis of their identities and their lives. They give to those kind of things. They support those kind of things. They join those kind of things when they're communities that are collectively, they're rallying around pursuing a better way of life. Hear me well, not a better way of thinking. You guys, we obviously have a better way of thinking. We're obviously more rational. But the problem is, we keep trying to reason people out of something that they weren't reasoned into in the first place. I wasn't reasoned into Christianity. I was loved into Christianity. And if you want to draw people in spite of its crazy narrative, you've got a better narrative. But don't kid yourself. You're not going to draw anybody in unless you can offer for them identity, and relationships, and a sense of mission that's about making the world a better place. So how do we do that? How do we do it? Hey, listen, I can give you, if we had time, I could give you 1,000,000 house, but I bet I'm out of time already now, right? Where we at?
You got 5 minutes?
I got 5 minutes. I'm not even trying to tell you how. I'm trying to tell you why. Because I come to these secular meetings, and over again I go to seminars in which they're like, how to fight against this, how to win this debate, how to win this argument. And what I'm here to tell you is that we are fighting the wrong battle. That is not the battle. The question that we need to be asking is not how do we prove that they're wrong, but is how do we offer people the same values that all people want. But how do we offer those values? Not supported by ancient myths or by supernatural fairy tales, but how do we offer them love and goodness and purpose and mission based on reason, based on common sense? What I'm telling you is that these groups on the campus have to become communities where people are committed not only to thinking a certain way, but to caring about one another. And then out of that mutual care for one another, reaching out to other people and targeting people on the campus and saying, that's a person who I don't think believes in God, but they need to be in good friendship. Or that's a person who I don't think believes in God, and boy, they would be good at helping us create a healthy environment here. He's got a great sense of humor. She's really good at music. He's really relational. It's about relational outreach. All right. I loved our Friendly Atheist blogger seminar. He's talking about all these different ways to get the message out there. But we talked afterwards. And they said, you know what, it's funny, because when people change their minds, it isn't usually, you go, how many of us changed our mind because we read this book? How many of us because we saw this online thing? How many because we saw this blog? But the truth of the matter is if you really get down to why people change their worldviews, almost everybody changes their worldviews, whether it's about gay marriage or about faith or it's on the basis of relationships. It's on the basis of, it's when you get put into a context in which making that change becomes possible, where you're supported by people that are thinking the same way, and where it becomes a really possible, not just, it becomes a viable way of life. And that's your job on a college campus, is to create a community in which a young person can walk in there and go like, listen, I can be secular and be good in a way that really makes a difference. Online stuff is good. Lectures and books are good. But they're tools. They're tools in the hands of people. The real way in which you change people's lives is by creating a context in which you demonstrate to them that being good, that pursuing goodness with a secular framework is not only possible, but a better way of life than anything else they could imagine. That's the why of community. If you want to talk how, you'll have to find me after the session. Thanks so much.